Mrs. Clemens handed me a hamster cage in front of the entire class. "You're in charge of Pickles for spring break. This is a huge responsibility." I held that cage like a baby the entire walk home, and the second I got to my room, I put it on the top shelf by the window so Pickles could get sunlight and my little brother couldn't get his hands on him. Saturday morning, I woke up to a chair scraping across my bedroom floor and squeezed my pillow tighter, trying to hold on to the dream I was having. When I finally opened my eyes, the cage was gone and the chair was shoved up against the window shelf. I sprinted to the backyard and found my 3-year-old brother in the grass, holding the empty cage upside down. "Fwee, Lickle, Hamstar." He grinned and pointed at the bushes where Pickles had just disappeared. He woofed a guas. I tore through every bush in the yard for 3 hours with a flashlight and a trail of lettuce. Nothing. Sunday morning, I emptied my birthday savings at Petco on the closest hamster I could find. And even though Pickles was tan with pink ears, and this one was gray with gray ears, I figured it was close enough, and I'd just have to wing it and pray nobody noticed. Monday morning, Mrs. Clemens was at my desk before the bell even rang. "Did Pickles get bigger?" "Spring break growth spurt." The class crowded around me, squinting. "Why is he gray?" "He's molting." A kid in the front row whispered, "That's not Pickles." I shrugged and said, "You might want to get your eyes checked." Half the class giggled. The bell rang and everyone scattered to their seats like nothing happened. I thought I was in the clear and started walking back to my desk when I felt a hand grab my shoulder. She crouched down to my eye level and gave the cage a long look. "That's not Pickles." I cracked and told her about the chair, about my brother in the grass, about Fwee, Lickle, Hamstar, and me trying to make it right. I just stood there defeated and tired, waiting to get expelled or sued or whatever happens to third graders who lie. However, she didn't get mad. She pulled a chair over, sat down across from me, and looked at the cage for a long second. "Sweetheart, I've lost Pickles 3 times. She told me about the summer she took her home, and the dog got into the room. The field trip to the duck pond when she escaped behind the snack table. And last year, her niece left the cage open while she was babysitting. She's from Petco too. So was the one before her. So was the one before that. She made me swear on my life I'd never tell. From then on, every time a new kid had to take Pickles home for break, Mrs. Clemens would shoot me a knowing look across the room, because the class still thought Pickles was the original, and none of them knew there's been 5. My dad and I were out fishing in the middle of the ocean when he cut the engine and told me to dump the bait. I lifted the cooler lid expecting fish guts, and instead found white bricks taped up and stacked all the way to the top. Dad clapped my shoulder, grinning ear to ear. "I've been running coke for the cartel for 20 years, mijo. And now that you're done with school, it's time you joined the family business." 2 days later, he handed me a backpack with a brick inside and pointed at a house across town. "All you gotta do is knock once, hand it over, and walk straight back to the car." He waited in the driver's seat while I walked up to the porch. The door swung open, and a little kid in dinosaur pajamas was standing there holding a juice box. "Are you the doctor my mom called?" Behind him, his mom was face down on the carpet with a glass pipe an inch from her hand. The kid stepped aside to let me in, and I just stood there, frozen on the welcome mat with a brick of coke in my backpack. Dad honked from the driveway, so I set the package on a table by the door and walked back to the car without saying anything. I watched the house shrink in the side mirror until we turned the corner and the kid disappeared from view. Dad clapped my shoulder again, grinning ear to ear. "That's my boy Mijo." He was still humming when we pulled into the driveway. That night, I sat alone in my car staring at Dad's boat hitched to the truck. I kept seeing that kid in the doorway holding his juice box, and all I could think about was how Mom raised me better than this. I pulled out my phone and called the DEA tip line. I gave them the marina, the boat, and the time. At sunrise, Dad whistled the whole way down the dock, fired up the engine, and pointed us toward open water. He grinned at me from behind the wheel. "Today, mijo, you're gonna do the dump yourself." I lifted the cooler lid, and that's when the Coast Guard came over the radio. 3 boats boxed us in within seconds, and they had Dad cuffed face down on the deck before he could finish a sentence. He kept his eyes on me the whole time, scanning my face like he was searching for an answer. "Mijo, who would do this to us?" I lifted up my phone so he could see the DEA hotline still up on the screen. "Me." The grin slid off his face for the first time all morning. Dad spent 20 years teaching me how to dump the bait. He never realized I was the bait. I opened my book to start my report, and Mrs. Whitaker stood up so fast she fell backwards out of her chair. She got up off the floor, marched across the room, and got right in my face. "What is that?" I turned the book around so she could see the cover. "Captain Underpants and the Perilous Plot of Professor Poopypants." She ripped it out of my hands. "Are you kidding me right now? That is not a real book. I gave you a week to find a real book by a real author." I told her it was both. She turned to the class and held the book out like evidence. "Has any of you ever heard of a real author named Professor Poopypants?" A few kids laughed and shook their heads. She turned back to me. "You expect me to grade this?" I told her there's 12 in the series. "I've taught elementary for 15 years and read every book in this room. That title is made up and this is a 0. She shoved the book at me. "Take it to Principal Hayes. I'd like him to see how you spent your week." Principal Hayes was eating a sandwich when I walked in. He took the book and started laughing at the cover. "Professor Poopypants, son, sometimes we panic and make stuff up. Best way out is owning it." I told him I'd checked it out from our library 2 weeks ago. He put his sandwich down. "Fine, let's go see." We grabbed Mrs. Whitaker from her room, and the 3 of us walked down the hallway in single file. She kept muttering about wasting her morning. The librarian was sorting books on her cart when we walked in. She lit up. "Oh, you guys here for the new Captain Underpants? Just came in this morning." Principal Hayes took the book from her hand. Nobody said a word the whole way back. The class was still doing seat work. Principal Hayes set the book on Mrs. Whitaker's desk and stepped back. She picked up her red pen, crossed out the 0, and wrote an A next to my name. Someone in the back whispered, "Professor Poopypants," and the whole class lost it. Principal Hayes walked out without a word, and Mrs. Whitaker kept teaching like nothing happened. On our next book report, half the class did Captain Underpants. She gave us all an A without reading a page. "Dad, pull over to that yard sale. They're selling a lamp worth $1,000 for $10, my son said, pointing out the window. I laughed. "You're 9 years old. How could you know that?" He immediately pulled out his phone and showed me the exact same lamp selling on eBay for $1,200. "See? When I pulled over, he ran out to buy it and made $990. I was really impressed, and that's when he said something that shocked me. "By the end of this year, I'm going to be making more money than you." I didn't know what he meant, and the next day, he showed me a printed list of 15 yard sales happening that morning. "Dad, I organized this list so we could go to all of them. These things are a gold mine." I grabbed the list and saw he'd sorted them by zip code so we could hit them in the most efficient order. I knew he wasn't kidding, because around his waist was a bag that had a spiral notebook, a calculator, and a small magnifying glass. He was fully equipped to spend all day looking for items to resell at a higher price, and I wasn't going to be the one to tell him no. "Let's get started." At the first sale, he walked past the furniture and went straight to a box of old dishes. He picked up a pink mixing bowl, flipped it upside down, ran his finger over a stamp on the bottom, and handed the woman $5. When she wasn't looking, he wrote down the profit in his notebook. Paid $5 for the pink mixing bowl. It was worth $92. The profit was $87. The whole time I thought it was just some childhood hobby, but within a week, he'd sold every single item he found. My 9-year-old had turned $60 into $430, and this was just the beginning. The next weekend, he walked into a flea market room and saw a small oil painting leaning against a bookshelf. The price tag said $30. He turned it over. On the back was a sticker from a gallery in Boston and a number written in pencil. He looked extremely shocked, like it was the best thing he'd found so far. "Dad, this is going to change our lives." Before I could ask what he meant, he walked up to the woman running the sale, held up the painting, and said, "This is really nice. Can I have it for $15? She looked at it for 2 seconds. "$20 and it's yours." He paid her in cash from an envelope he'd started carrying specifically for this. When we were alone in the car, he handed me the painting and told me to look up the artist who painted it. I did. His paintings sold at real auction houses for between $4,000 and $6,000. "Did you know how much it was worth when you offered her the money?" He shrugged. I wasn't sure, but I had nothing to lose, because if I was wrong, I would lose $20. If I was right, I wouldn't. The next week, he took the painting to a real auction house. They confirmed it was authentic and bought it from him for $4,200. When the check arrived, he cashed it, came home, and set his notebook on the kitchen table between us. "Dad, I told you I'd make more money than you by the end of the year. It's December. I did it." Then he flipped to the next page. "Which means we need to talk about quarterly taxes. You owe $1,400 to the IRS because the eBay account is in your name." I already did the math. My teacher slammed a paper down on my desk. "Book report. This is due in a week. Make sure you all read every page." She glared at me, knowing I'd do anything to get out of reading. She leaned down. "Remember, if you don't pass, I'm holding you back a year." I just nodded and went home and played Fortnite the whole night, saying I'd start tomorrow. But as I kept getting wins every day after school, I finally checked the due date. Tomorrow. I completely panicked, shutting off my console. If I failed, I'd get held back. My parents would kill me. I was pacing around my room, completely panicking on what to do. I immediately looked up the book and breathed a huge sigh of relief when I saw there was a movie. I watched it twice just to be sure, and made up an entire presentation with ChatGPT. I had to stay up the entire night, and when I walked into class the next day shaking, I could tell she was suspicious. She called my name, and I walked up to the front of the class. I read off my AI-generated notes, and I could see her her looking more and more suspicious of me. I was standing there sweating. She definitely knew I watched the movie, but it was almost over. Any questions? Nobody raised their hands, and I was relieved. But then our teacher raised hers. My heart stopped beating. Yes, I was wondering if you could tell us what the difference was between the book and the movie. My heart completely stopped. Time slowed down. I knew it was over. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. But then, it hit me. I'm sorry, miss. I never saw the movie. She just sat there shocked as I sat back down. Dave grabbed my tongs and shouldered me off my own grill. Step aside, amateur. Let a pro handle this. Knock yourself out. I stepped back. Every summer, my wife's brother took over my grill, and every summer, I quietly fixed whatever he set on fire before the guests noticed. My wife called it keeping the peace, but this year she was watching from the patio, and I'd already decided I was done saving him. He picked up my rub bottle, sniffed it, and tossed it on the table. Store-bought. Explains a lot. My wife's smile flickered. Dave pulled the grill open and glanced at the grease tray. Bit full. Whatever. He slammed it shut. This was a disaster waiting to happen, so I offered him one last way out. You sure you don't want me to take over? He glanced at my wife. Then he laughed loud enough for her to hear. Relax, champ. I've been doing this since before you had a driver's license. Then he raised his beer to the patio. Wife sent the boy out to grill, but a man's gotta eat. A few guests laughed politely. My wife uncrossed her arms. He cranked all 4 burners to high and dropped a second layer of ribs on top of the first. One slipped off the tongs and hit the deck. He kicked it under the grill before glancing up at the patio. Dave raised the tongs over his head and winked at my wife. She rolled her eyes, then forced a smile when he turned back to the grill. Watch how a grill master does it. Then he slammed the lid shut. Seconds later, flames roared out from under the lid, taller than Dave, and climbed into the paper lanterns I'd strung that morning. The whole string went up like a fuse. The rib Dave had kicked under the grill caught too, black smoke pouring across the deck. Guests scattered, screaming. A lantern fell into the potato salad and set the bowl on fire. Dave was slapping at his sleeve, yelling for someone to get a hose, his beer still in his other hand. Turns out an overflowing grease tray on 4 maxed out burners was exactly what he'd dismissed. My wife picked up the tongs from the grass, handed them to me, and turned to her brother. Amateur. I leaned in. It's okay, Dave. Now let a real man handle this. I shut off the burners and picked my rub back up off the table. I saw my stepmom doing something on my laptop, but when I tried to look closer, she immediately closed it so I couldn't see. When I went through my laptop that night, I saw $2,000 missing from my college savings account. I immediately told my dad, but he just waved his hand and said my stepmom would never do that. I knew I needed to do something, so I set up a camera behind the bookshelf and angled it towards my laptop. A few hours later, I watched the footage and saw my stepmom use my laptop to log into my college account and transfer $400 into her own account. I showed my dad, and his mouth dropped and he apologized for not believing me. We made a plan. The next day, he said bye to my stepmom and left for work like usual. But when she left for work as well, he immediately circled back to the house. We logged into her personal account and instantly transferred back every cent she'd stolen from me, plus interest. She came home from work that evening, and me and Dad hid behind the doorway when we saw her go to my laptop. She opened my college account, and that's when me and Dad stepped out. She immediately logged into her own account to pretend that's what she was looking at, but then she saw the number in her balance showing 0. Her face went pale, but when we started laughing, she instantly pointed her finger and accused us of stealing from her. I shrugged, maybe we did, and she went red, threatening police immediately. That's when I took out my phone and showed her the footage of her transferring my money. My dad told her, "You either accept what happened and get out of the house, or we're the ones going to the police." Her eyes teared up, and she started scrolling her phone looking for Airbnbs she couldn't afford. I looked at my college fund, now higher than before, and laughed because my stepmom had just been outsmarted by the teenager she'd tried to fool. My new landlord stormed in. "Throw out the mutt or get evicted. You can't have both." I pointed at Mufasa's vest. "He's a medical alert dog. I have epilepsy, and he paws my leg 30 minutes before a seizure hits. I've lived here for more than 20 years, ever since I was 5. I can't afford anywhere else. Since I'm the landlord, I set the rules. If you wanted to set them, you should have bought the building like I did. You have 30 days to get him out, or you both are leaving." I nodded, but I wasn't giving him up or leaving. The next day, I brought medical records, but he didn't look up from his phone and shooed me away. When I offered to pay extra, he finally looked up and laughed. "Boy, I have money. Why would I take more of yours?" So I walked out, and a couple days later, I brought a signed letter from every neighbor in the building, but he didn't even open it, just slid it back across the desk. There were 3 days left before eviction. I sat at my kitchen table defeated with the form and wrote, "I choose to keep my dog." But that's when Mufasa started scratching at the door, whining at the ceiling, then yanking at my sleeve hard enough to rip it. He wasn't pawing my leg, so it wasn't a seizure. "Mufasa, what's wrong?" He dragged me upstairs to an apartment with the door open, where an old man was lying across the kitchen floor. I dropped to my knees beside him. "Sir? Sir?" Nothing. I called 911 and checked his pulse the way I'd learned to check my own. The paramedics burst in 6 minutes later. One of them mom turned to me. Another half hour and he would have died. They carried him out to the ambulance, and I rode with him to the hospital and waited next to his bed. An hour later, the landlord burst in. "Where is he? Where's my dad?" The man I'd just helped save was his father. He froze when he saw me with Mufasa, and that's when his dad opened his eyes. "That dog saved my life." The landlord dropped into the chair, head in his hands. "My dad's been having heart attacks for months. I banned pets because I thought one would set him off. The thing I tried to throw out is the only reason he's still here. The dog stays. You stay, as long as you want." My new landlord just spent 30 days trying to evict the only thing in this building that saved his dad. I flew to Tokyo for $1 million hide and seek tournament and won by hiding in the dumbest spot in the room. The set was full of hiding spots, cabinets, hollow walls, trapdoors, paintings that slid open into the wall. 10 of us were playing, and the last person hidden won $1 million. The host pointed at a chalk square in the corner, with a chair in the middle facing the wall. The chair was for the seeker to sit in while he counted, but he chose to stand at the wall instead. The buzzer went off, and everyone else sprinted for the cabinets and trapdoors. I tiptoed over to the seeker's chair, sat down facing the wall, and waited. The seeker finished counting and walked straight out of his square without ever turning around. He pulled open a cabinet, yanked a kid out by the ankle, and that was one down. On the monitors above the set, the producers in their booth were cracking up watching me sit there. He sped through the rest of the room, ripping open hollow walls and dragging kids out of trapdoors until only me and one other guy were left. Out of ideas, he walked back to his counting corner to think. He leaned on the back of my chair and looked around the room. His hand was an inch from my shoulder. He looked right past me at every wall and then walked off. He chased the last guy across the kitchen set and pulled him out of an air vent. The timer ran out and a horn went off. The host walked to the corner, pointed at my chair, and said one word: "Winner." The seeker spun around like he'd been slapped, saw me sitting there with my legs still crossed, and just froze. His own counting chair was the one spot he never checked. They handed me $1 million check while I was still sitting in his chair. I opened the garage to reveal my daughter's birthday present, a vintage car with a bow on it, and she looked at it with disgust. "Ew, what the freak is that? All my friends have new Teslas. You could have at least gotten me a second-hand Lambo. I don't want this junk." I crossed my arms. "If you don't want it, you're not getting anything else. I don't care. I'll take the school bus over that. At least the bus has my hallway crush on it." I felt extremely disappointed in myself for raising such a spoiled daughter. That car took me a year of weekends and late nights to build with my bare hands, and her ass couldn't even say thank you. I knew I had to do something that would teach her how to be grateful for things the hard way. I grabbed the keys, got in, and drove off. I drove to a mechanic shop to sell the parts. When I pulled in, a girl my daughter's age was sitting on the curb, bawling her eyes out with Kleenex. I thought she was just another spoiled girl. But inside, I heard her mom was inside talking to the mechanic. He said, "I can fix your family car, but it's going to cost you $5,000. The mom cried in her palms. "We can't afford that." She walked outside and knelt down next to her daughter. "I'm sorry, baby. We can't afford to fix it. We'll figure out the bus for now." I realized that this girl was probably even more grateful than my daughter. I looked at the keys in my hand and knew that this was the perfect opportunity to teach my daughter gratitude. "Excuse me, baby girl, but I have a car that nobody wants. It's yours if you need it." The mom shook her head. "I appreciate it, sir, but we'll be okay." I knew she was just lying to be nice. She took her daughter's hand and started walking toward the road. But the girl looked back and saw the car for the first time. She froze. She let go of her mom's hand and walked toward it. "Mom, this is a '69 Mustang." Her voice cracked. "The '69 is my dream." I looked at them. "I'll sell it if you don't want it, but if you do, the car's yours." The mom wiped her eyes and nodded. I gave her daughter the keys. "Follow me to my house. I need to get the title." They followed me home. My daughter heard the cars pull up and came outside. The girl ran up to her. "Your dad is the GOAT. He told me he built this car himself. This is my dream car. Did he build you a car too?" I smirked because I knew my plan was working. My daughter's face went red. She looked like she wanted to explode. "No, she's not into this stuff. She prefers Teslas." The girl looked at her like she was judging her. Okay, lol." My homies pulled a folded jersey out of a paper bag, and my hands were shaking before I even touched it. Andre and Big Trey had pooled their money for it. It was a real gold and purple Lakers jersey, James on the back, and the 23 stitched on, not printed. Big Trey held it up against me, and the bottom hit past my knees. "Bron for all," I whispered the way I always did before every shot. Andre grabbed his ball. "Let's go ball before Ryder hogs the court." We ran out, and he was already there in those limited LeBron 22s I'd been wanting since they dropped. Big Trey nudged me. "He's gonna want that jersey." He clocked the jersey from across the court and stopped what he was doing. "Y'all see this? Bro is 4'10" in a LeBron jersey. Who let LeBaby out the crib?" I told him to shut up and kept walking. He stepped in front of me. "Bet you can't dunk in that thing. You dunk one time, my 22s are yours. You miss, the jersey's mine." A crowd was forming before he finished the sentence. I looked over at my homies, and Andre flicked his eyes to Big Trey, who gave a tiny nod. I dropped my backpack and walked under the rim. I jumped as high as I could and my fingertips came up about a foot short. Ryder doubled over laughing. "Hand it over, la baby," but Andre grabbed my arm and pulled me into a huddle with Big Trey. "We got you. Eyes closed. Bron for all. Trust us." I walked back to the free throw line with Ryder still laughing. I took one dribble. I closed my eyes and screamed "Bron for all" at the top of my lungs and felt my feet leave the ground. When I opened them, I was hanging from the rim. Ryder's mouth was open and the whole court had gone silent. I dropped down into Big Trey's arms and saw his hands still up where my ribs had been. That's when I knew. They had launched me, with Big Trey catching me under the arms and throwing me at the rim while my eyes were shut. Andre had been the one shouting "eyes closed." Ryder bent down, untied the 22s, and slid them across the concrete to me without a word. I sat down right there on the court and pulled them on. They fit perfect. I tapped my chest right where the 23 was stitched. "Leave 'em, leave 'em, leave 'em. I ain't Bron for all no more. I'm all for Bron." Me and my brother Jack were 16 when we watched a kidnapping documentary and decided we needed a way to protect ourselves. We secretly drilled a hole in the hallway wall behind Dad's painting and hid a loaded gun in there. We also made up secret code words to signal if we were ever in danger. Then one day while walking by Jack's bedroom, he stuck his head out and said, "Hey, can you go help Dad with the scrambled eggs?" He closed the door and I froze because that was code for "There's someone in my room and I'm in danger." My legs were shaking, but I calmly walked downstairs and lifted the painting off the wall. I reached in and grabbed the gun, and that's when Dad rounded the corner. His face went red and he loudly said, "What the hell are you doing? Why do you have a gun?" I freaked out and instantly pressed my finger to my lips, whispering, "There's an intruder holding Jack hostage upstairs." But my dad yelled back, "An intruder upstairs? Don't be crazy. I would have heard something. Put that gun down right now." My heart jumped in fear because I was sure the intruder heard my dad say that and now knew I had a gun. Then suddenly Jack shouted from upstairs, "I'm just going to have a bath. I'll be done in an hour." I almost dropped to the floor because that was our word for "I'm being kidnapped." Dad shouted back, "Okay Jack, I'll see you soon." And I gripped my gun tighter and frantically whispered, "Please Dad, just trust me. I'll explain everything later." I started walking upstairs quietly, my fingers shaking around the trigger, but Dad suddenly pulled me back. "Okay, that's it. I'm checking this out for myself." He began marching up and yelled, "Jack, your brother is acting very strange." I looked around panicked and knew I had to do something. The intruder had definitely heard everything, so being stealthy was no longer an option. I grit my teeth and sprinted up with my gun as fast as I could. I shoved Dad out of the way and flung open Jack's bedroom door. A man in a ski mask was climbing out the window holding Jack with one arm. He was almost out. Dad saw it too and ran toward Jack, but he didn't have enough time. I raised my gun and aimed just as the man stepped on the windowsill, then exhaled and pressed the trigger. The bullet flew from the barrel and hit his knee, and he collapsed to the floor, screaming in pain and dangling halfway out the window. I sighed in relief as Jack landed on the floor and ran towards me. I dropped the gun and we hugged, holding each other super tight. My dad looked at us while trembling and asked with a shaky voice, "How did you know?" I replied, "We have our code words."